back and they repeat it back to themselves 10 minutes later after you've had a chance to walk away.
And then
it's
they
like,
realize,
oh my God, he insulted me.
Wait a minute, did he just
And
talk
there's
some
nothing
stuff
they
to
can
me?
do about it.
yeah, it's like that. Have you ever seen that thing about how to tell someone they're stupid in a nice way? You know, or say someone else is stupid.
Oh, here it's
And so
bless
things
your
that-
heart. Oh, bless
Oh, wait,
your
wait,
heart.
wait. Aren't we supposed to have a show?
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
we
streaming, by the way.
Okay, fine then. All right, who is hosting?
I will do that because it's been a year. Or at
And I'm
least-
pretty sure I
Yeah.
got the innards on the next 2 shows.
It's been a year since you did it.
It
last?
feels like it because every time it's my
Okay.
turn, somebody says, "Oh, I'll go ahead and do it." Eric's done it twice to me since it's. Yeah,
I have no idea when I did it the last time.
Yeah. All right then. Go ahead then, Bill.
All right, let me do a 3, 2, 1, then 20 seconds of silence for no real good reason. 3, 2, 1, record. All right. Looks like the stream's good. Nobody's watching yet, but that's fine.
Yeah, they probably thought we weren't going to have a show.
I made sure I posted it everywhere to remind everybody. Oh, but I didn't put the show notes on the website yet. I'll have to do
We
that.
lost all our listeners because we're missing shows so often.
Look, you ever listen to Bad Voltage? They'll
I used
say,
to.
Yeah, they'll say they're coming back in 2 weeks, and 6 months later they'll throw an episode in the feed, and then they get all kinds of feedback because it actually works in their favor because people are so shocked because you put the RSS feed on there and then you just forget about it, and then a episode pops up and you're all excited about that. Anyway, here we go. Londoners there. Good. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 463, recorded on Sunday, July 6th, 2025.
Wondering if Majid died the other day. I'm Joe.
Glad Majid's still alive. I'm Bill.
Yes, I am still alive. I'm Majid.
Living the dream. I'm Charles.
Yeah, and Eric's is off fixing his wife's car right now. First up in the news, Linux hits 5%. Nintendo does what we feared. The orange baby eats a taco, or 2, or 3, or a dozen. Steam prefers Proton 2 native. Fedora might have killed Bazite, and a new Firefox release. We also welcome Charles as our new co-host. In security and privacy, more passwords leaked by big tech. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. Please remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, the full show notes for this episode are linked in the show's description at mintcast.org/show notes. And I don't have this episode up yet as we speak, but I will have them here momentarily. We would like to take a moment to inform everyone of some of the changes we are making to mintCast. There is a general consensus that we need to adapt the format to maintain the quality of the show and also keep it to a more sustainable footing. Therefore, we are making the following changes, which we started with the last show, episode 462, as a trial and are going to make permanent to update the length and format of the show. We've switched to a more conversational format for the news and security and privacy, less rote reading and more conversation. I honestly feel like that's the kind of thing people would rather hear when they're tuning in. We've decided to split off the Wanderings to the Roundtable episode, which currently is only on YouTube, though we are considering adding it to the RSS feed. That is a second show, kind of a secondary show that we live stream. Historically we've live streamed it the weekends opposite of the regular show, and it just sits in YouTube, and anybody that wants to participate can. Moving forward, the episodes will alternate between news episodes and innards episodes, or in other words, topical episodes. This will also allow more time to discuss things which demand more attention while being mindful of the overall length of the show. To be clear, then, Wanderings will be during the roundtable show, which is live streamed on Saturdays, opposite of the regular show. Of course, other stuff will be discussed as well. Again, in the future, we may decide to add roundtable to the RSS feed so that folks who only subscribe to the audio-only version of the show will still hear the Wanderings. This might even end up being kind of a bonus for those folks. I've not done that yet. That will take a little bit of implementing because we don't typically record that. We just stream it off, so it'll have to start being recorded. One thing we have perhaps not made as clear as we should is that Roundtable is open to anyone and everyone in the community. We get together on our Discord channel. There's links on the website to an invite link that is just open to everybody. Every Saturday opposite the regular show at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. All, and I mean all, are welcome. In fact, we would love to see everybody there. mintCast is by design a community-driven podcast. That's the one thing that's unique about mintCast is that we are not a show that, you know, these guys that you see here are all you get. The thing I love about mintCast is it was an open door to anyone who wants to try out podcasting, that thinks, you know, hey, you know, I've got some opinions about Linux and I'd like to come on and talk about it, you know.
If you want to come on and tell me how much you hate my biweekly wanderings because I'm all over the place, please come on and tell me. I'll tell you you're wrong, but
I don't think anybody's ever...
And you'd like to come on and shout, Majid, you are a noob. Please do so.
Well, if we didn't have Majid, we'd have to go get some other noob. And, well, gosh, that was a lot of work the first time, so let's try to avoid that.
Oh, thanks.
No, there is a lot of value in the curiosity.
We do try to keep a token British person on the show, but Majid was as close as we could get.
Yeah, well, someone needs to be able to speak English properly, innit?
Oh, there it is.
In it.
I don't know what's in it. Moving on. Yeah, we want to, like I said, mintCast is by design a community-driven podcast. We want everybody that listens and loves mintCast to take a bit of ownership in the show. We want to build this around the things that you want to talk about or you want to hear us talk about. We want to hear all that stuff. Don't be afraid. No matter how stupid it is, you're not any stupider than I am. Trust me. So just give it all.
Yes, I can agree with that.
Yeah, Majid is too. Yeah, we want to talk about all the stuff you want to talk about. Okay, so moving on. We would ask for a bit of time to give the new format a chance because we're kind of ironing this out as we go. It may take a little while to get the rough edges ironed out, but we are confident it will be a better experience for everyone. We hope these changes serve the purpose of allowing us to improve the quality of the content while also creating a show that is sustainable for the present and future hosts. We would love to get any feedback you might have on the subject. If you think the new format is rubbish, tell us. We're not going to do anything about it, but tell us. If you think it's great, tell us. We'd rather you tell us that. This is your show as much as it is ours, like I said. And I mean that. I really do. And I think the other guys agree as well. The show is called The Podcast by the Linux Mint Community for all users of Linux, and we really do mean that. And I think that's part of what makes us unique. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. In the news. So who wants this first one? Or do you want me to just call it out and then go from there?
Well, I was hoping that Charles would take it. It is my article, but I see that he didn't have any, so I was going to offer him the opportunity to read one, especially since they're short now.
Well, no, I have one.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'll take
the
this
Fedora.
one.
The Fedora 32-bit one is mine.
Oh,
awesome.
Okay. So Trump extends deadline for U.S. TikTok sale to September.
So the orange baby likes his tacos, yeah?
Turns
Really
out,
loves
He
his
chickened out
tacos.
again.
turns
Yeah.
out TikTok's
Anyways.
the only thing anybody pays attention to anymore.
Yeah, we're trying to keep our opinion on politics out of that.
Oh, okay, fine. So
Specifically
luck.
when it comes
okay,
to
so should we?
to the
So let me rephrase it then.
Mango
So
Mussolini.
yeah, so so let me just rephrase that as that President Trump has performed another U-turn. That is just an accurate thing to say, right?
Well done,
This
you.
is a negotiation technique. He capitulates until he gets what he wants.
Yes, because that worked so well with Putin, didn't it? Worked so well.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway,
We've
sorry.
inserted our politics. Now stop.
Okay, fine.
All
So
right.
this
US
is all about
President-
TikTok, isn't it? It's all about TikTok.
Yeah. U.S. President Donald Trump the other day extended to September 17th a deadline for China-based ByteDance to divest the U.S. assets of short video app TikTok, despite a law that mandated a sale or shutdown without significant progress. A 2024 law required TikTok to stop operating by January 19th unless TikTok's Chinese parent ByteDance had completed divesting the app's U.S. assets or demonstrated significant progress towards a sale. Extended several times while a deal is being sought. A deal had been in the works this spring that would spin off TikTok's U.S. operations into a new U.S.-based firm, majority owned and operated by U.S. investors, but it was put on hold after China indicated it would not approve it following Trump's announcements of steep tariffs on Chinese goods. Some Democratic lawmakers argue that Trump has no legal authority to extend the deadline and suggest that the deal under consideration would not meet legal requirements. So yeah, imagine.
This makes me laugh. It really does, because he spends most of his time complaining about China and how China's so bad and China's this and China's that and all this. And I mean, there's another news article which I didn't put in, but that OnePlus phones might get banned in the US because
I saw that. That's
because
so.
Yes, I mean, apart from the fact it's rubbish, but the point is, he says all of this, and then here is something which is, such a. There are definitely issues where the issues are overblown, where the issues are not overblown, all this kind of stuff. The point is, this seems like exactly the type of thing that the ruling elites at the minute would want to get rid of, as in TikTok, and yet they don't, which just shows that there's very little integrity in this whole idea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the whole thing is, for me, is, yeah, I know not everybody could do it as easily as we could, but there's no way that the U.S. government would be able to tell me not to use TikTok if I wanted to use TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost
they
like
could say it.
I mean, what happened to freedom of speech now? Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
being open, and we don't want cancel culture. We want to be able to talk, have difficult conversations. All right, okay, then fine. Go on then.
Here's a thought experiment. What if the source code and the algorithm was open sourced? How could you even...
that would fix the issue. I mean, the complaint is that they're sending personal information back to China. So yeah, if the source code was open, then that could fix it. And I understand the concern there, because it's entirely possible that they are sending every bit of your data back to China. But there are easier ways to fix that and stay on U.S. servers, and that's to block the return data to China.
Yeah. Data going to China. You mean like what Samsung has and what Facebook has?
Block the callbacks.
And
yeah. So yeah,
and the OnePlus thing really it does upset me. Okay, yes, OnePlus is a Chinese company, but it was originally made, and yeah, maybe they've shifted a bit. It was originally made to bring you high-end devices at a lower cost. And that, yes, it's not quite as good as it used to be at doing that, because it's gotten more and more expensive as they've gotten bigger. But it did lead to, them splitting off into nothing. And nothing is still trying to do that to some extent on a much smaller scale, which is more maintainable for them. So,
yeah, I mean, the thing about OnePlus was it just seemed to me like a rerun of the Huawei situation. That there was a company that was doing well, that might, was, I mean, because the company's done very well, obviously outside of the North America. In India, it has brick and mortar shops. There's OnePlus phones everywhere. And it was getting up to a level where it might be able to break. I mean, I know they've already sell stuff in the US already, but it was getting up to the stage of like, this could be, the next big thing, as it were. And then this happens, and it's like, yeah, this reminds me a lot of what happened with Huawei, and it's completely political in the sense that, probably some big corporations have got and said, look, we don't want another a player in this market. Samsung wouldn't want another player in the market. Google wouldn't want one. Apple wouldn't want one. But hey, call me. I don't know, conspiracy theories. I'm not going to get into it.
But it's not, it's not like they're helping American phone makers. They're helping other foreign countries' phone makers because America really doesn't have a proper phone maker.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's exactly that's why I'm saying that it's probably some big tech, having somebody's ear and saying, what would be good is if this competitor wasn't here anymore.
Because, okay, Huawei their hardware was kind of awesome. At least the pieces of Huawei tech that I've used in the past, I really enjoyed.
I had one of their phones. We've had a couple of them. Tablets as well. Very impressed.
So yeah, and the OnePluses that I've gotten my hands on, yeah, they were the lower cost ones, the Nord N200 and the Nord N3, but for being low cost, I mean, they're pretty dang good. So I don't know. That's kind of off the topic with TikTok, but I don't know much about TikTok because I've never really gotten into the short form.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that the youth love. I'll tell you that. There's been a couple of big concerts here in the UK. Oasis getting back together, had their first show on Friday. Yesterday we had the Black Sabbath. The final show with Metallica there, and massive.
You got BTS getting back together.
Well, okay, I don't know about that one, but they were all being live streamed on TikTok by people. Do you know what I mean? My son, that's where he went to see it. And so it is obviously something that's part of the zeitgeist and part of culture. As I said, it's the double standards about this that annoys me. That's what it is. It's if we want to talk about stewards of data, should we have a talk about Meta and their stewardship of our data? Do you know what I mean?
You don't want me to start talking about Zuck.
No. But I know that's going to be another tangent we could go off on completely. But I'm just saying that's the only thing that annoys me about this whole TikTok thing. I find it all right. I've used it once in a while. It's about Meta. Fine. I mean, it doesn't. It's not a big part of my life, but I see my sons, they're on it, so.
All right, I think we need to move on to the next article.
Yeah, I think we do. So this one's yours, Bill, isn't it?
I think so. Steam Client now enables Proton by default for games without native Linux builds, and this particular article is from 9to5 Linux. Valve released a new stable Steam Client update today, being the date of the article, bringing a few interesting changes for Linux gamers as well as various other enhancements and bug fixes. The Steam Client update for June 30th, 2025 enables Proton by default for games that don't have a native Linux build, which is equivalent to setting the Enable Steam Play for Other Titles option to the enabled state, and that's kind of huge. Also, for Linux gamers, this release improves the installation speed of Steam Client updates.
So let me get this right. If there is a game that doesn't have a native Linux build, you would be using Proton anyway, wouldn't you?
You would, but in the past, if it was a game that was not officially supported...
Okay. You have to manually go in and turn on Proton in order for that to work.
But not anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay. All right.
The question, though, is if the game has, and I have not... Anecdotally, I think you'll, by default, get the Linux version if there's a Linux version, but in most cases, that's kind of a non-starter. But the bottom line is you no longer have to go and enable, because for titles that were not officially supported by Steam Play, you had to enable the Steam Play beta, and then you had to restart the application and all that, and it was a bit of an ache to get all that up and running. Now it's just
you only
seamless.
have to do that once, though, really.
Yeah.
And there are some games, excuse me, most specifically Borderlands 2. It has a Linux version.
Yeah.
For everything except the final DLC. So you're better off because you get the extra levels and you get the new play area and all that jazz, the last stuff that came out. You're better off playing the Windows version under Proton than you are playing the Linux version. So I don't know. There are probably other games that are similar to that, that probably just play better, you know.
I mean, I've heard stuff
with Proton.
I've heard stuff saying, you know, on the internet about how the performance of games under Proton is very, very good. It's very, very good. In some cases, better than the Windows versions on Windows. So I can imagine it being better maybe than a native Linux one as well.
It's kind of simple, actually, because when you're talking native Linux games, I don't know that a lot of games are writing that they're using. I don't know that they're using the Vulkan API so much, because I've heard that it's a little bit more of a ball ache to get up and running. So a lot of them are using OpenGL, and compared to ActiveX or whatever they're using on the Windows side, it's just not as performant. Well, if you've got a layer that is just taking those system calls, those API calls, and translating them to Vulkan API calls without the developer having to know how to do any of that, then you're going to have a game that performs better than the Linux version. And then on the Windows
Proton
side,
was first coming out,
on the Windows side, it's just simply the fact that Windows has got a whole lot of garbage running in the background, holding the machine down, you know, to begin with. So you're already starting with your hands tied behind your back.
When Proton first started coming out, you heard a lot of complaints because of how easy it made everything to, you know, play Windows games on Linux. And the complaints were that people weren't going to be developing for Linux anymore. They were just going to develop for Windows and then, you know, let Proton and the open source community handle the translation to Linux, so there would be less developers for Linux. And yeah, you kind of see that now, but I don't see it as that much of a problem because it still allows everyone to play games on Linux. So if you could only support one format, one platform. Now it's true to say that if you support Windows, then you are by extension supporting Linux as well because of Proton. Now, get all this stuff working on Xbox so that I can switch my kids over to Linux, and then we've got something going on here. Because I have to ask everybody, is Bill getting quieter?
I don't know, am I?
Sound all right to me?
Yeah, I had to turn up my volume so I could hear him. He does tend to run a little quiet.
Okay, I was just wondering if he was getting quieter. He started out quiet. It sounded quiet.
Audio, check. There, how's that? That's
Much
bumping.
better.
That's bumping into the red.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
Sorry about that.
Yes. You've got I know me and Joe both have Steam Decks. Bill, have you got one as well?
I don't. I really only have kind of an academic interest in all this, just because I want to keep up with the progress.
Do you have a Steam account?
Yes, and I have games. I've got quite a few games on there. I just don't sit and play them because I just don't have the time. and I only ever play them. I don't think I've ever installed Steam on a Windows machine. So for me, I want to see how well this thing works on Linux. And now my kids have Steam accounts on their machines, but the vast majority of the games they play is on Xbox, whether that means on an Xbox machine or through the whole Xbox ecosystem on their laptops, because they have that going on as well. And
what about you, Charles? Have you got a Steam Deck?
No, I don't have a Steam Deck either. I'm not much of a gamer, but kind of like, Bill is kind of just keeping up on, where things are going and headed or discontinuing. So,
I mean, I suppose it does a lot for Windows compatibility in general, doesn't it?
It's just hard to deny that a technology like Proton has brought us closer to, people being able to use Linux as their gaming solution, because prior to Proton, you might have gotten a few games to work on Wine, and it was Lutris. You had solutions, but it was very,
simple.
very hit and miss, and it wasn't simple. And we're not there yet. You still have to use Windows for games like Fortnite and stuff like that. But as far as I know,
but that's because the creators decided that you weren't going to be able to play on Linux, and if you did, you'd get banned.
Yeah,
because you were a cheater.
And that's a very human. That's a cultural problem, isn't it? That it just so happens that a lot of Linux gamers just happen to be cheaters, I guess, or what is that? Is that
no? A lot of cheaters find it easier to use something that's open to do their programming.
And I don't know how we fix that problem. I don't know how we move forward with that. I have a feeling it would involve just Linux in the hands of more normal people. But I'm kind of happy.
Linux having more than a much larger market share would do it.
Well, that's a huge conversation that I wonder sometimes how much we really want that, honestly, because in order to bring Linux in the homes of normal people, and that word normal is subjective, isn't it? What would we have to do to Linux to get normal people to consume it? We would have to make it into something
Put
like
it in
Windows.
schools.
Yeah, well, that there's going to be an article about that later in the news, so I'll get to that.
Watch this space.
But either way, no. The concern is once Linux does become, common and it has a large portion of the market share, something like Windows or even, iOS, then big business, more big business, I should say, would get involved, and then it just, becomes
nothing will exist
giant
without
corporation, right, and they'll just take over, and it will be the next Microsoft again.
And you think about all of the big technologies that we rely on right now. They really System-D and to a large degree, Wayland and things like that. There is some big money somewhere backing a lot of that up. So we're already in a place that is not all that comfortable, but in some way you kind of have to be.
You got to deal with the devil a little bit.
Yeah, you got to deal with the devil, and it is what it is. Some of these things are huge, and it takes a team of people. At the same time, if we got to a place where it would only exist at the whim of some big companies, then we might be in trouble. But it is still open source, so I mean, there's still going to be that freedom to take the things you don't like and change it. We'll figure out a way to be the iconoclast, no matter what happens. People like us that like to make podcasts talking about this stuff, But yeah. But anyway, yeah. Well done. Well done with all that. Steam and
so next
Valve.
is Firefox. Whose is this one?
Yeah, that was mine as well.
Okay.
And
take it away.
And then that's it. I promise. Firefox 141 promises to use less memory on Linux system. Beta out now. With Firefox 140 promoted to the stable channel as the latest ESR, which stands for Extended Support Release, Mozilla promoted the next major release, Firefox 141, to the beta channel for public testing. Firefox 141 appears to be a small release that only promises to use less memory on Linux systems and no longer require a forced restart after applying an update via a package manager, and I can attest to that myself. Another new feature in Firefox 141 looks to be the ability to drag a tab to your pin tabs tray to pin it or drag it out to unpin it. So in other words, you've got some tabs that you want to stay open in between closing and restarting Firefox. You can pin those tabs, and before you had to right click and pin and then right click and unpin. Now you can drag them in and out of that little grouping to make that happen. That's kind of cool. It also looks like the wheel icon on the new tab page lets you customize the new tab page with a wallpaper or change how many rows of shortcuts to see at a glance. Has been changed into a customized button with a nice fade in and out effect. For web developers, Firefox 141 promises to re-enable support for chips, which stands for cookies having independent partition state. Implement the close by attribute and is related close by property, and add support for cleaning the BF cache, which stands for backwards forwards cache, when receiving the clear site data cache response header. This allows a site to ensure that if anyone navigates backward after a user has signed out, private details that were visible during the initial session will not be exposed, said Mozilla. Mozilla plans to release Firefox 141 on July 22nd, 2025, along with the Firefox 140.1 ESR and Firefox 128.13 ESR release. Until then, you can download the latest Firefox 141 beta version from the official website, but keep in mind not to use it for production work. I've got it, and I've not had any trouble with it. I'm using it right now.
So I noticed something when mine updated. Do you remember they launched this AI thing, Orbit, a couple of months ago? Right? It doesn't work with the new one. The extension doesn't work, and I think they pulled it, the whole thing.
From the beta, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of makes sense.
Which is a good thing if that's what that, because it's not like we've got enough AI everywhere else.
God, make it stop, or give us a way to take it out ourselves, because that's honestly irritating.
So I did find that a bit. That that was under the radar, because they haven't said that in anywhere. That we're withdrawing it or anything like that. At least not that I saw anyway.
What's not 100% clear is how any of that translates to less space in memory, and I could not tell just from looking at little anecdotal data on a your system monitor or whatnot. It's kind of hard to see a huge difference. So if there is, I don't know. It's probably not going to make a huge difference for most people that have a decent amount of RAM or a decent sized system, But it is good that changes like this are made, that improvements like this are made. So Firefox for the win. We hope it stays alive.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, I actually tried out the new Zen browser recently. They're kind of. It's all right. It's not bad. I mean, I'm not sure if I'll switch to it, but it's fine.
Is it as good as Edge?
Gets out. You mean Arc?
Edge.
I'm assuming
Microsoft Edge.
Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah. Well, Microsoft is shite, isn't it? Let's be honest. Although it's not bad with PWAs.
It's probably the best browser they've ever made. Probably because they didn't make it.
Yeah, which, to be fair, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. It's not exactly saying much, is it? Let's be honest. I haven't used Edge for ages. The only thing I use it for, or I used to use it for, was progressive web apps, because that seemed to work quite well. But now Firefox does it. A lot of the other Chromium-based browsers, Brave, Vivaldi, whatever they do. So it's just not a thing anymore for me.
So moving on, Linux reaches 5% desktop market share. Asterisk.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Majid.
So this has been ported in a couple of different websites, to a couple of different YouTube videos, and basically on Stats Counter, when you're looking at the different market share of all the different operating systems, Windows, Mac OS, OS X, OS 10, which for some reason is always counted separately. I don't know why. Chrome, whatever. Linux has hit 5% now in the US. And if you dig further into the numbers, it's even higher in certain other countries. Like in Germany, it's 5.8, for example. In India, it's about, I think, 5.5, something like that. So the question is, why? And also there's the kind of addendum to the question is, does that include Steam as well, and Steam Decks and stuff like that? And in this article and in a couple of other articles, what's been posited is the Windows 10 switch off, if you want to call it that way, when support ends in October 27. Yeah, October this year. What are people going to do? Because of the things that Microsoft has put into Windows 11, the compatibility things, they need to have TPM, certain processor, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of people who are still running Windows 10, and again, if you go on look into the data on Stats Counter again for the different versions of Windows, there's something Windows 11 is on like 44%, and so is Windows 10, meaning that there's an equal number of people using an OS, which is going to be out of support in 6 months' time, or less than that, as the new one, even though Microsoft have been pushing all this stuff. And so one of the reasons that has been posited is that people, instead of buying a new computer, are going towards Linux instead. Yeah. Because I had this situation at home in which my wife's laptop, which is a ThinkPad, it's not that old, but it's a 7th gen i5 ThinkPad. I want to say 570, but I can't remember, to be completely honest. And whatever I do, whatever hacks I do, I cannot get Windows 11 on that machine. It just everything. I've done, I've burned ISOs, I have everything I can think of I've done, and every time the installer starts and then says this computer is not supported.
Have you tried Ventoy?
Ventoy is the one thing I haven't, but I've tried. As I said, I've burnt it onto a OS. But the thing is, okay,
it's besides the point. This forced obsolescence is completely horrid.
It is. I mean,
you have really good hardware that's out there that is just no longer going to be able to run simply because Overlord Microsoft said so. Yeah. But that's also, not the whole of the story there, because you have to take a look at history here and see how long people ran XP beyond the time that XP was supported. Yeah. I mean, they ran it all the way through 7. They ran it all the way through 8.
If you don't stop them from using it, they will just keep using it. Nobody is going to say, nobody is even paying attention. Unless they stop Windows 10 from working, full stop, they will keep using it until the machine that it runs on stops working, and then they'll go to Walmart and buy another or whatever the equivalent
but you see, the thing is that people can't necessarily, we've got, things are more expensive. We've got cost of living crisis going on, and laptops have become expensive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You know,
so they just keep on cooking.
Yeah, and so you just keep on with that. And so, for example, so I'm now in the situation of what do I do with my wife's laptop? She is very resistant to going on to Linux because she has had that before once. I had got Linux Mint on, and for some reason she didn't get along with it. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the battery life. I don't know what it was, but for some reason she didn't get along with it. And so when I said to her that, look, you know, there's going to be issues now because the security of the system and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, whatever, just leave it the way it is. I don't care. Just leave it the way it is. Which now then worries me, and I'm thinking, do I need to get more security stuff onto that? Because at the moment it's just got Windows Defender.
Nope, that's all you need.
Gone for well, yes, but is it all I need now if things going out of support?
Microsoft has extended the security updates for Windows 10 specifically because of this problem, where people aren't making the switch and older hardware is still out there. Will it eventually become a problem? Yeah, maybe. It means you aren't as protected, but then again, you know, unless you're targeted, and yes, it can happen to anybody, but you're rolling the dice. Have you tried maybe seeing how well Windows 11 runs in a VM?
On that machine?
Yeah.
I haven't. Didn't think of that.
You install the most minimal Linux that you can that allows for a hypervisor, and then you make a VM of Windows 11.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because I was actually watching videos about hypervisors and KVM yesterday. Actually, you know,
try Ventoy first before you do that, because you can
try Ventoy first.
Yeah, because Ventoy has a secondary install shell, which will skip. It looks different from the install process you've seen with the regular ISO. It skips over checking for secure boot and TPM, and it also will skip over, if you want it to, disconnect it from the internet and install it without an internet connection. You can skip over the process of adding a Windows account to it.
So Rufus does that as well, right? And that's how I installed the ISO. And you know, when you go to, it's not install, that's how I, you know, burn the ISO image, and I think a dialog box came up, and then the options were, you know, do you want to remove TPM, you know, do you want, as in looking for TPM, do you want to remove this, looking for square boot, secure boot, and all that, and I ticked all of that, and still the computer was like, still the installer was like, nah, this is
I think it needs that secondary. I think it needs that other install shell to actually skip over it effectively, because you've got, with Ventoy, you've got the choice between the regular install, what they call the regular install, or the Win install, they call it, which is basically the regular installer that you get through Windows. And if you try to use that, you'll end up in the same problem that you had, where it sees that you don't have the TPM and the Leo said Arch is bloated.
Yeah, and then
Leo, you are always wrong.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's obviously a good money spinner, this as well, because, well, firstly, Microsoft is giving people, you know, they will give more support for an extra 30 quid a year, apparently. So you have, you know, so you pay that tax. Or there are third-party programs that are out there. I came across one called Win Bootmate, which will do all the stuff that you kind of mentioned.
That doesn't sound dodgy at all.
No, it doesn't. And you know, for £30 or whatever, you can do that, apparently. So it's like, okay, you know, this is turning into a money.
You know, Ventoy.
Yeah,
it's just Ventoy.
I promise you that'll work. I've got Windows 11 installed on about a half a dozen machines sitting around me right now that are. This one over here is a 4th gen, dude. And
I would assume though it would have to be a complete nuke and pave install. You're not going to be able to keep anything, or
no.
Yeah. I thought so. Yeah, fine. Okay, well I'll look into that. But so what do you? Okay, so if it's not Windows 10, right, and all of that, why do we think that Linux has reached this 5% mark?
Well,
Well,
it probably is to some extent the whole Windows 10 thing, along with the fact that Steam is allowing other hardware systems to use their Steam OS.
Yeah. I've
So,
seen the
I mean,
Lenovo Legion.
you saw the big bump when the Steam Deck came out. Now you're seeing another large bump since they're allowing others to use that operating system. So that could account because it was at what 4.2 at this time last year or something like that, or earlier this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is quite a jump, but it can be explained between the whole Windows 10 thing and the opening up of the Steam OS to other systems.
I mean, the other thing that has been posited, but I don't know how big that would be, is there are quite a lot of people who are getting fed up with big tech, and so people are starting to explore. Now, I don't know how massively that happens, or is that happening in such numbers that would cause this kind of change? But I have heard of that.
With the Windows 10 thing, also the going to 11, and when it becomes easier to install Linux than it is to force install Windows 11, yeah, I can see that having an effect.
So do you think in Europe the trend to go from Windows 10 to Linux is greater than it is here in the
Well, I mean,
States?
I bet
just
it
looking
is.
at just looking at the stats, just looking at the stat counter, it seems that it's slightly higher in Europe. Now, are we saying, as I said, it could well be multifactorial, maybe other things going on as well, maybe other reasons for that. I don't think.
Well, you've got governments adopting it over there and
Yeah,
things
true.
like
You
that.
do have governments and things like that, so maybe that might sway some people. But
Well,
yeah, but as you say,
you could have said that. You could have said that a decade ago.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how many times since then has a government said, "Oh, we're only using Linux," only to turn around and 6, 8, maybe 12 months later say, "Yeah, no, this didn't work."
Well, yeah, because they
Yes,
use
no,
a
it did.
stupid version of
It
it.
didn't work. We're going back to Microsoft, and the fact that Microsoft are building a factory just outside the city has nothing to do with it at all.
The fact that they've got a sales office that just opened up in the same building, they're renting space off of our municipal building here. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've beaten that one to death, haven't we? Really?
Yeah. Well, we'll be back to it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
F-44 change proposal. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I stumbled on this last week accidentally, not so much directly on that headline, but through another YouTube or Brian Lunduke, who is a tech journalist, open source advocate, former programmer, and in the headline, it says Fedora blames Lunduke for saving Fedora, and I'm going like, that's a weird headline. So I listened to his YouTube, 20 minutes or so, just under 20, and he goes on this absolute rant about the proposal for Fedora to drop 32-bit support, i.e., for games and that. And he got into some conspiracy things, and he
He's
started
well
going,
into that. He's a complete nutcase. I'm sorry. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? He's
okay.
well into all that conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, and anyway, so I said, well, this is kind of bizarre. So I started digging around. I found another story about, the guy that runs Bazite, and they interviewed him, and he talked about it. And he said, yeah, he said that first thing he said that he wouldn't have, the way that the proposal was posted in the Fedora discussion group there, he thought was problematic as the fallout, came about, and the sky's falling, and and ruining Linux desktop experience. I mean, and the Baza, Kyle from Baza said, well, he said, yeah, it's unfortunate. He said the issue is there's more work to keep making the ISO compatible with 32-bit, and we need to figure out how to fix that or make it more efficient if we're going to keep doing it for a while. So I started thinking about, okay, kind of like this started reminding me a little bit about the X Windows situation in Plasma. it's like, how long do you keep trying to support something that's old when things are moving forward? And then the controversy over X Windows, that individual that spun it off, forked it off, and he kind of got into a rant he got political about why he wanted to spin it off. I mean, so it just, and again, just like we were just talking about Windows 10, the end of life, but that's for a different reason. But there's some similar things, how long is Microsoft going to keep supporting it? The problem with that, as we've noted, is that the perfectly good hardware shouldn't be obsolete because you decide to put in TPM and say it's for greater security, and that's always the excuse. It's kind of like, well, we got to protect the kids or security. Then it's like, then we got to do that. So anyway,
this situation, I would say, is a little different than that. I mean, you've seen all the other, large Linux OS creators drop 32-bit because there isn't as much of a requirement for it. Less and less people are using 32-bit systems. Don't get me wrong. I probably use 32-bit systems longer than most people. I loved my little netbooks, but the problem gets to be, as you're writing this code for less and less and less people, it becomes less and less and less valuable, but doesn't take any less time, essentially. So I can see them wanting to drop it. And, it sucks, but since I'm not willing to take up the whole programming for a 32-bit operating system, I guess I don't really get to complain.
So I saw this as well. I didn't see the London YouTube video, but and I read also the thing about this would kill Bazai, and I couldn't understand why it would. And then then I read a couple of the articles and stuff, and I came to the conclusion that what it was basically saying was that a lot of games are still 32-bit, and so therefore you need 32-bit to run that, and Bazite being a community effort, not something that's done by a company or whatever, it would just fall apart because they've been relying on the upstream code from Fedora. To which my kind of thing was, how many games really are there out there now, 32-bit, that people are playing?
There must be enough.
I'm not a gamer, but
I think there's a lot of retro games that are only 32-bit. People play. So
but then a lot of those retro games are played under emulation anyway.
Right.
Well, on emulation on 64-bit system or emulation just in general?
I would say emulation just in general.
Okay.
I'm not a gamer. I'm as people have said, but I'm just thinking, like whenever I've done any kind of retro gaming, it's always been through something like RetroArch or some other kind of that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Rather than playing old
with
PC
the translation
games.
layer.
Yeah. So plenty of people have made the point that apparently this is so big, the number of titles that are still 32-bit, that Windows has made zero effort to push moving all this stuff to 64-bit. Because if you look at a Windows, to this day, a Windows installation, you've still got the program files, and then you've got a folder that says program files x86, and one of those is for your 32-bit programs. So it's still a separate thing on the Windows side. As long as that's the case, it's not going to change here. So
this 32-bit code allows 32-bit games to run on 64-bit systems. So I think that's the issue there. But there's no way that you can force a company like Fedora to do 32-bit if they're not going to do 32-bit. So
I think so, but I think they would be worried about losing the users that are playing games on Fedora. Because
let's be honest, that's not a huge number, is it?
I don't know if it is or not.
This is Red Hat, and their money is coming from elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's what some of the stuff Lunduk was talking about, too, because he got into that. So, but anyway.
Right on.
So, anyway, there you have it. So,
cool.
Moving on.
Nintendo is nuking Switch 2 accounts for using MIG Flash. Joe, what do we got?
Yeah, I just put a blurb of this in. This is a few weeks old now. So it's very truncated. MIGs are cartridges that allow users to back up and play their own games, including from like the Switch 1 era.
Very cool.
Players could use the MIG to play Switch 1 games on the Switch 2. But even playing their own games, people got banned from Nintendo accounts, preventing the playing of any game that requires online verification or requires a download from Nintendo. So this is a bit of an extension of the articles that we did last show, where we were talking how Nintendo could just arbitrarily shut off your Switch and make it essentially useless. Now, there are still some games that you can play on cartridges that don't, have to dial back to Nintendo to actually do the download and things like that from for the Switch 2. But that's still, it seems horrible that you're not even allowed to back up your own stuff and use a backup of your own stuff. Do some people use it maliciously? I'm sure that's the case. But find a way to differentiate from the people that are using their own from the people that are pirating. Don't just block off people from doing backups.
So, I mean, I'm assuming they're thinking that it's easier for them to just do this and, stick 2 fingers up rather than, as you say, have a proper workaround.
They must have worked out the math.
Way to see who's doing the right thing.
Yeah, they must have worked out that, like, even if we do end up alienating some people that are not cheating, that are not pirating and whatnot, it's still easier and more worthwhile to just block the whole thing full stop.
Yeah, and another thing that wasn't in this article but was in another article I read was that it's actually the hardware that is also blocked. So even if you turn around and sell the device, which people have done, you got a bricked device, you turn around and sell it, it's still good hardware, and then the new person gets it and tries to sign in, but it's that device itself is completely blocked from Nintendo. So you have a paperweight.
Yeah. And that's not a step in the right direction.
Yeah, which is just crap, isn't it? Frankly. Again, I suppose, what do you expect? Big tech will try and keep its profits, isn't it?
Yeah,
I suppose.
It just seems a little heavy-handed.
It does, but we come at these things from a completely different perspective. We're not only wanting to participate or consume the content or the games that they are making for us. We've got an interest in all these other things, the technology of it, the community around it, and things like that. So, our way of thinking is alien to these companies, I think, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And this is that thing I think I mentioned last time, who are Switch users generally? It's normies, it's kids, it's people who will just pay the money. If Nintendo says pay the money, they'll pay the money. They'll buy the thing for 450 quid and then spend £75 on Mario Kart. Do you know what I mean? It's,
right.
And so this group of people that might be doing things, emulation and this, that, and the other, it's just so small that they're really kind of like 2 fingers, do whatever, do one.
Why is it even worth their time, honestly? Why even... Nobody in the real world is going to even know anybody affected by any of this. So what is it worth to them?
You got to think. I mean, all this controversy, and they still practically sold out day one. I mean, the highest sales ever. It's completely nuts.
Yeah.
I think we're probably the only people that actually give a crap.
Right.
The people that do get locked out of their account.
Yeah, but it's again that thing, that the precedent, isn't it, of all of this.
Well, on that note, let's move on. Security and privacy. 16 billion passwords leaked in Google, Facebook, Apple. Massive data breach. Dun, dun, dun. Who put this in?
So are you telling me that big tech can't look after our data?
It seems as though they can't.
Shocked I am. Shocked.
Yeah, this is a couple weeks old now, too. I think it was a little old when I put it in the show notes. But I still wanted to talk about it because it was so freaking massive. I mean, 16 billion passwords were leaked. I mean, how nuts is that? Researchers found data sets that expose logins and user account information for Apple, Google, and Facebook. So basically, the planet. Researchers at Cyber News, an independent media outlet covering cybersecurity and information news, reported that they discovered over 30 data sets, each containing billions of logins to social media, VPNs, and user accounts for major tech companies like Apple and Google, had been left exposed for info stealers. So this is just a warning, people. If you haven't done it already, change your passwords.
Yeah.
Use 2FA on everything. Everything.
Use
Yeah, I was
a
also listening.
Didn't we have this conversation about whether it's worth changing your passwords on the previous episode?
and
Was
we
it
will
OTC?
again someday, I'm quite sure. Yeah. Use a password manager
doesn't hurt.
and use different
Password manager.
passwords on different things. It's worthwhile.
And use 2FA.
Yeah.
Always.
Use 2FA.
Yeah. Sorry, Charles, you were saying
2FA
something?
Yeah, I listened to Enterprise Linux Security. I don't know if you guys heard that podcast, but they were saying not only change your password, but they're recommending go to passphrases along with MFA because passphrases do a better job, as far as protection. So anyway,
Passphrases are just essentially longer passwords that are easier for you to remember. So if you're using something like a password manager that's giving you longer passwords that are completely random, then you're still just as well off as you would be with a passphrase.
well, yeah, I think they're recommending passphrases because that's going to be almost always longer than people who only use an 8-character or a 6-character password.
Right.
I think is why they're recommending.
And don't forget about
passphrase.
passkeys. Passkeys is the
Well,
new hotness.
Yeah. I mean, I do like passkeys actually. I do sometimes worry about them, but they're convenient, especially on mobile.
I think a lot of people have yet to wrap their heads around it.
Yeah, I haven't put the time and effort in to understand passkeys yet and how they're more secure than anything else. But yeah, I mean, and like I was about to say, 2FA, no, it's not perfect, but it does make things more secure. So more secure than just having a password, even a long password. So yeah, 2FA.
The arguments I've heard against 2FA though are a bit out there. Like, well, a state actor could spoof your phone profile by getting hold of your IMEI number on your phone, and then they've got access to your SMS. Yeah. And I'm like, how important do you think I am?
Yeah, exactly.
But then the difference there is, instead of it being a broad thing where somebody found your password in a database, you would have to be targeted specifically for that. That's the difference.
Yeah, rather than getting onto someone's servers or something.
Yeah, cookie authentication sessions can be grabbed too. But again, that's a different level of sophistication of hacking, but it does happen, or has happening, and is happening. So,
right on.
Yeah. So as I understand passkeys are basically you're giving the app the authority or whatever, the access to use your biometric data. So therefore, you are signing with your thumbprint or your Face ID or whatever. That's what I understand from passkeys. Please, if I've got that wrong, somebody explain it better.
I don't understand it enough to really get into it.
I think that's an option, but I don't.
Yeah,
I think it's an option, but I don't think it's required.
Leo is our expert on passkeys. I'm sure he would
create
love
a passkey.
Leo's in our
I'll have
comments
to
right
have him
now.
come on and give a talk on passkeys.
Leo's cussing you out in our comments right now, Majid, talking about passkeys.
Yeah, go ahead. Let him, man. Come on then. Come on then. Come on.
Because he's knowledgeable and he wants to be able to, show off his knowledge, but he's not on the show today.
Right.
So we'll have to get him on sometime.
So
he can wow us with how great he is.
I wouldn't mind hearing it, honestly.
Leo's being
I wouldn't either.
And insightful. So
I want somebody to explain passkeys to me so I don't have to research it myself.
Well, there you go, Leo. What do you got not going to do about that?
Steve Gibson from Security Now did a deep dive into it a couple months ago. If you want to go find an episode.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, moving on from that. Vibrations from... Oh, no, wait. Yeah, okay. Vibrations from the ether. Everything's out of order now. We got a couple of interactions here. Who put these in?
I put the first one in.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mark was a donor on Ko-fi. I wanted to make sure he got a shout out. He did send me some money. Thank you. I appreciate it. And he said, thanks for all the great listening over the years. Also going to donate a few coffees worth to Mint and archive.org on behalf of the other great hosts. Thank you very much, Mark, and it is appreciated, and it's always nice to see people when they have a little bit of extra money to, toss it at the things that they use so that they're still around in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, and the next one is from me. I had an email from Alan Gilchrist up in Scotland. And firstly, I want to say I'm really sorry that it took me so long to reply to his email. I think he emailed me at the beginning of June or the end of May. And yeah, he basically said that he enjoyed my music rambling episode 460, and he was interested in my experiences with the Yoga Slim 7X, which is the Snapdragon laptop that I've got. He's getting one for the same reasons, really nice laptop. He's looking to try and get Linux on it. He managed to do it by turning off Secure Boot and switching off BitLocker disk encryption. So he was now going to try a direct ISO approach. And he was also telling me Last of Us second season is pretty good. And then he actually had a follow-up email because he was like, I should have listened all the way through before sending the first email. And he liked the fact that I was talking about Amigas. And he'd bought himself a Amiga 500 in the 80s, and then gone on to 1200, and then even upgraded it. But then, like everybody, at some point, caved in, got a Windows 98 PC. But then, he moved over to Linux in the mid-2000s. And he's now rocking Manjaro, which apparently is based on Arch. Did you know that, Bill? Did you know that?
So, based on Arch, that could mean a couple of things. Manjaro was originally just maybe, you could probably say that in the beginning, where they kind of held on to the repos a little while, and then, but I think they've diverged slightly.
Yeah, they have diverged a bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I then replied saying that I'm really sorry that I didn't reply. It was because I had changed phones some months ago, and that account.
Lame.
Yeah, that account didn't get transferred over, so I did apologize. So I was having Ubuntu 25.04 on that Snapdragon laptop, but then there was a Windows firmware update, and then it stopped working. It just spits out Ubuntu boot failed and goes into Windows 11. So at that point, I just thought, I can't be bothered with this, because to be fair, it did feel a lot like a beta. There was lots of random bugs and issues. I couldn't really use it as a daily driver. It's a shame because the machine is lovely, but I'm having to use Windows on it for the time being. And then we talked a little bit about the television. I said I'm going to add Last of Us onto my ever-increasing watch list, which is on like a ridiculous number of things. And I also mentioned about how, if you were to cut my heart open when I was a teenager, you'd probably see Amiga written on it. I was such a super fan. I loved that machine, loved that OS. And now, in a sense, Linux has kind of taken that role. And I too have been trying to run Arch. I'm trying to get CachyOS or Garuda, but couldn't seem to get it to work on the hardware I was trying. So he replied back to that also, and saying that the same thing happened to him as regards Ubuntu. And it seems that when Windows does the firmware update, it relocks the secure boot, puts it back on. And so he used to start getting the same Ubuntu boot failed, but he went into the BIOS, changed it, and switched it back on, and now it seems to work. So I'm going to have to try that. As I remember, I mentioned that at least on the podcast, that there's some random things that wouldn't work. Like one of them was the battery indicator, and he was saying that he managed to get that work, but he couldn't manage to get audio working. Bluetooth was fine, but the C speakers didn't. And so it is going to take time. These are new devices. There are new kernel needs to be updated, I suppose, to support this kind of stuff. It's definitely not daily driver, but I hope it will be. Mainly because I want to see what the battery life is. Because the battery life on Windows is crazy. It's as close to that M1 MacBook Air I had a couple of years ago. So yeah, thanks a lot, Alan, and thanks a lot for your email stuff.
It feels like when you talk about battery life, it feels like when these machines are bespoke to the operating system, you're always going to have a little bit of trouble going outside of that, just because there's some kind of firmware optimization or something going on that is proprietary, and only Windows is going to have access to whatever that is that's making that work really well. It is what it is,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is what it is. My only worry actually is that there's a lot of stuff going around about how it is perceived that this move of Windows on ARM hasn't gone as well as Microsoft and Snapdragon expected, and how long they're going to persist with it or whether they won't, especially now that the new, because it's obviously spurred on the competition. Intel's new chips are very good. AMD's new chips are very good. Getting you that same kind of performance, same kind of battery life, but without any issues around compatibility because they're x86.
I don't know about over there, but the Snapdragons over here, it seems like they're being sold more to this imaginary person that just wants to use AI everywhere to do content creation and whatnot. And I'm not sure.
I mean, AI is a buzzword. Every AI is all.
Yeah, but I just don't think people are as interested in that.
No, they're not. In fact, I've even heard people like specifically getting stuff so they don't have to deal with the AI.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anywho, but yeah, no, thanks a lot for your emails, Alan. And then as I said,
I want to make a couple of comments here. First of all, good job for running Arch and mentioning it at least 5 times. I appreciate it.
Except he's not running.
Yeah,
Arch,
no, I get what you're saying about Garuda being a little, the color scheme being a little weird. But Majid, was it you that said you had trouble running Garuda?
So I was trying to install CachyOS, and then it would always. I think I shared it in our Discord. I'd get these weird boot errors and stuff like that every time I tried to install it. So I thought, forget that, and I thought, let's try Garuda, and I was having the same thing again. And so at that point,
it's weird because I've made Garuda run on a tablet, so
I don't know. It's probably me. Problem in chair, not in computer.
It's not for everybody. Linux is not for everybody. It's
Arch, yeah, not for everybody.
I have to remember when I'm talking about Arch, I've been using Arch for probably 13 years, so all the things that are simple to me, I wrapped my head around a long time ago. And
I try not to use Arch, but I will if I have to.
There are things just, if you're the kind of person that wants to try different things, Arch probably provides the best platform for that, because it's the easiest distribution to switch out an entire desktop environment without tearing the whole thing apart.
No, disagree.
Because recently I wasn't going to bring this up, but recently I switched out XFCE on my Rode machine for GNOME because I had heard the battery life was better with Wayland and whatnot, and it appears to be true. But it's just a matter of removing there's two meta packages that you remove to get rid of XFCE and its constituent packages, and then the same, just install two meta packages for GNOME, and then do a restart and you're up and running, Whereas you try to install, if you install GNOME and you try to remove, or if you install Ubuntu and just try to remove GNOME, you might, unless you know what you're doing, you might run into some trouble. But I don't know.
When you're removing the old desktop, I just tend to, stack possibilities when it comes to desktops.
Yeah.
So, like with Mint, you can just install however many desktops that you want to, and then just, use, Light DM to pick the one for when you log in.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that with the other flavors of Ubuntu as well. I've done that with Ubuntu and having a GNOME and KDE version. I think I did it with Kubuntu once and with Mate as well, over the years. I mean, it does, Leo's going to love this, it does make the system more bloated, because obviously now you've got double of things, Say you've got GNOME, and then you decide to install KDE, you're going to get all the KDE apps, the Dolphin and all that sort of stuff, even if you do a minimal install of it. And now, whether that is relevant or whether that's an issue, depends on yourself. Do you know what I mean? Some people will be like, well, who gives a crap? I've got two file managers. But other people will be like, no, there must only be one. My OCD is sticking off.
Well, that's me, because I dropped to a shell, disabled the display manager, and
to be fair, I'm in the second category as well. To be fair,
yeah,
no, because I use X2Go, there are different situations where I will need different desktop environments. So, I will run Cinnamon when I'm sitting in front of my computer, but I'm going to want, if I'm on a crappy connection, then I'm going to want something like XFCE or something a little bit lighter weight that works better from remote. So,
yeah, that's one thing I haven't had to use too much, and I'm kind of looking forward to see how well that works with Cinnamon on Wayland. I am really anticipating that. I don't know why. I don't know why I care about Wayland. I guess I don't care
because everything's going to Wayland.
Yeah,
you don't have a choice but to care about Wayland,
I suppose. But when I switched back to Mint when I started this show, or started on this show, I kind of decided I wasn't going to care about it if I was going to use Mint with Cinnamon on here, because they had not made that transition yet. Working on it. Watch this space. It should be out relatively soon. Anyway, moving on to check this out. And WHW03 mesh router with OpenWRT. Who put this in?
I did. No, recently I've been having trouble finding some of my travel routers. And then I remembered that because while looking for my travel routers, I found one of these. A friend of mine several years back gave me an entire box of these Linksys mesh routers, but I ended up not using them because at the time you couldn't put OpenWRT on them, and you had to use Linksys's app, and it had to dial out to them in order to do any of the networking in your home, and I did not want to do that. So I went and looked again after finding one of the routers, because there's a whole box of them somewhere in the mess I call a garage. And I looked it up again, and yes, there is a version of OpenWRT that is available and will work on these mesh routers. It looks like quite an involved process to actually get it installed on there, but I am going to give it a shot, and then I'm going to try and clean up the storage area in my garage and see if I can find the entire box of them and maybe do it on multiple of them, because I would love to have just an unlimited supply of portable routers. So, but that's me. And you will hopefully hear more about it in the future, maybe on the Saturday show. All right, that's all I got on that.
The Saturday show. I think we got a new name for the show. If we need one. We might not need one. Yeah, travel routers. You know, that's something you'd think I would have, because I've got Chromecasts and things like that, but you can't really get those working. For those of you that don't know, I'm kind of an over-the-road truck driver, and I have given up on having a TV in the truck and just watch shows on my phone, because the solutions for casting from the phone onto the TV are janky at best. And
you have a Samsung.
Yeah, well, I got Dex. Yeah, I can use Dex, but if that requires, that feels, it's starting to feel more and more janky all the time. So if I want my phone next to me to communicate with people, but yet still have it connected to the TV,
wireless Dex.
There again, another. I need a wire. I need a network going on in the truck, you know, to make all that happen, to piece that together. So Dex, yes, it's the reason I've stayed with Samsung all these years, is because I've got a thing set up in there to where I can just plug into the USB-C, and I've got a full PC, and these phones are so, it works so well that you really can't tell that you are on a mobile device, just because of how much they've put into that interface and getting the software to most of the software.
Also because how performant our phones are.
Yeah.
Anyways, mobile routing. You were saying you don't have a router.
I don't, and that's something I need to look at. I was looking at a couple of options, just haven't spent the money on
iNet every time.
Yeah.
GL iNet travel router comes stock with OpenWRT. I can send you the link for the one that I regularly use that's currently set up on my mini rack.
Do that.
But yes, $35.
I'll buy that now.
It is an awesome device. Super fast, easy to use. You can set up, I believe you can set up WireGuard on it, but I know you can set up OpenVPN on it easy enough and just dial back to your house. Works great. I've never had an issue with it.
Awesome. You heard it here, folks.
I will put that link in the show notes too. How about that?
There you go. All right. So if nothing else on that, moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see or hear of something you would like to hear us talk about, tell us, and we mean it. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org, join us live on YouTube, post at the mintcast subreddit, chat with us on Discord and Telegram, or, well, it did say post directly at mintcast.org, but I think I've turned that off. I can't remember if I did it. I must have, because somebody slotted that out there. People just don't tend to use it, commenting directly on the website. Next episode will be at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, July 20th, 2025. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, July 12th, 2025. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Wrapping up, Joe, how can we get more of you?
Well, I'm on a couple of other shows. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org. I do try to respond to every email that I get. Also, you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. I really do appreciate it, guys. It helps keep me motivated every time that I'm just thinking about stopping all of this podcasting nonsense. Somebody will throw me a couple of dollars on there, and it just kind of reinvigorates me.
Yeah, There's nothing like making a couple dollars doing the thing you love doing. I would love to I'd give anything to just retire and do this every day, but, that's a pipe dream, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Moss couldn't be with us, but you can get more of him. He hosts Full Circle Weekly News. In my opinion, the best Linux news podcast out there. It's just a news dump of all of the things that are going on right now. You can email him, Moss, at bodielinux.com. He's a pretty big deal in the Bodie community. Mastodon is at Zyvola at hosttux.social, and he is occasionally on Hacker Public Radio. As for myself, you can email me. I'm Bill at mintcast.org. I'm also, and this thing keeps moving for some reason, I'm also Bill_H on Discord, at WCHauser3, at fostodon.org on Mastodon. Also, I am on 2 other shows, Linux OTC with Eric and Majid, and 3 Fat Truckers. Links to both of those in the show notes. Majid?
So you can email me on drmajid@mintcast.org. I'm on Mastodon at atypical_doctor at mastodon.social. I am the Atypical Doctor on Instagram and Threads. I've got the Atypical Doctor podcast, which has just after I started season 2, things have gone a bit. But I'm hoping to do an episode in the next couple of weeks, depending on my recovery. And I'm also on Linux OTC with Bill, as he mentioned.
Eric couldn't be with us this evening. You can email him, eric@mintcast.org. Charles?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to work out how to contact me. That hasn't been set up yet. So.
Well, he's got Charles. Well, no, I haven't done that yet, have I? Charles@mintcast.org. That will be forthcoming.
Bill dropping the ball.
I guess I'll just fire myself right now. Oh, wait, I can't. No, he will have an email momentarily.
And he's on Discord, so come to our Discord chat. Come to our Discord, and then you can chat with him as well.
Well, you need to come over to the Discord anyway, because that's where you can participate on the roundtable every other Saturday and be a part of that show. We'd love to have you on there.
This upcoming Saturday, we're going to have to do a proper interview with Charles to get his full background out there.
That is definitely going to happen.
Uh-oh, trouble.
Inevitable. Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Apparently, I do the audio editing for the show, and I host the server that runs the website. I do the website maintenance, and I run the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. Nothing makes you feel more awkward than listing your own accolades. Archive.org.
I have no problem with that.
Well, hey, you earned it.
I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. So.
There it is. And sliced bread is pretty great, man. Archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hobstar for our logo, and NetRD for our animated Discord logo. Apparently it's animated. I don't know. Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions. Last but not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
And Co. And Wrap. And thanks, everybody in the live stream. We love you. See you again when we meet again.
Yeah.